All right, everybody. It is Pat Leonard from the New York Daily News and the Talkin' Ball live with Pat Leonard podcast on the Believe Network, brought to you by My Bookie, Boom Chaga, and Estate 98 Coffee. And we are here after the Daniel Jones benching for Tommy DeVito, not Drew Lock. That's the little bit of surprising part about it. Not a surprise that Daniel Jones has been relegated to the third stringer and essentially at this point shut down due to the terms of that injury guarantee. We will get into all of that, get to your questions, and talk about all of the ins and outs of the Giants' past, present, and future and the ramifications of this decision after speaking with Brian Daboll on a Zoom interview where the Giants head coach did his best to explain or not explain, depending on your point of view, why the Giants made this decision and where they go from here. My initial take on this is that the Giants regime, Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll, they look very bad, especially the general manager on the personnel side, that they gave $5 million guaranteed to Drew Lock, and they're not confident enough in the backup quarterback they had judged to be good enough in the spring to go right to him to make their product better. Brian Daboll saying that the spark Tommy DeVito gives the team in the offense made him the better player to go to, though couldn't answer in the affirmative when I asked him directly if Tommy DeVito has outplayed Drew Lock in practice. Certainly you risk losing another veteran in Drew Lock in the locker room with this decision. Also continuing to lose the locker room potentially because the players know you're not necessarily making a decision in the best interest of your team to win. Now we will see if I'm wrong about that. We will see if Tommy DeVito does make the offense and the team better. But I think Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll under as much pressure as ever right now to make this product look, more palatable to the fans. I mean, I was just talking to a fan earlier who said it's getting more and more difficult to go out to MetLife Stadium and to rationalize spending 6 hours on a Sunday when this is the product that the Giants are putting on the field, and that even reselling tickets and getting rid of them has become harder and harder this year. I do believe that the DeVito decision is also motivated ownership-wise by trying to feed some red meat to a fan base that gets excited about the local hero, the guy who made 6 starts, went 3-3 last year, Tommy Cutlets himself, and added a little juice to an otherwise dysfunctional and ridiculous season. But I wonder if the novelty of that wears off. Talking to some people today, I think people are still frustrated with the direction the Giants are going. The one silver lining of this, obviously, and the obvious reason why Daniel Jones was going to be benched in the first place, because they're 2-8. And now the only positive could be, hey, the Giants are going to get a high enough draft pick to get their future franchise quarterback. We saw Joe Schoen at the Colorado game, scouting Shedeur Sanders, Travis Hunter, some of the top picks and prospects in this draft, including one of the best quarterbacks. But obviously, no guarantee you're going to get there. And also, how does your team play hard for the next 7 weeks, knowing that this decision is motivated, at least in part, by an injury guarantee and not necessarily by the team you're putting on the field? I think there's pressure on Brian Daboll for this offense to look better. And Joe Schoen, are you still naming this guy, the general manager you're confident in, to make your quarterback selection when going into an offseason here this year where you knew that he was out on the quarterback now and looking to replace him? You don't draft one. Look at Bo Nix going for over 304 touchdowns for the Broncos in a blowout win over the Atlanta Falcons, and rampant backup quarterbacks doing well in the NFL this year, while Drew Lock is a guy they're not even confident going to in this spot against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Sam Darnold, Justin Fields, Russell Wilson, Malik Willis, even at 2-0 as a starter for the Green Bay Packers as a backup. Jameis Winston would have been a better option. So a lot of reasons to indict Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll and the Giants operation at the quarterback spot, let alone the team spot. Now, as far as Daniel Jones goes, obviously he hasn't been good enough, and we saw this coming. I personally believe he has been unfairly scapegoated as the reason why the Giants are bad and 2-8. He definitely could have given them some better play at key times, maybe added a win or two to the current dynamic and overall record. So it's not like he's without blame. There's no question about that. And for the future, the Giants have to move on eventually. But I don't like how they've done it. I think it reflects on how the front office has poorly handled the team overall. I think a lot of players turned off by the way this Giants operation treats people and players. I think you saw Darius Slayton commenting on Nick McLeod's Instagram post saying a free man with an exclamation point about Nick McLeod, who is now with the San Francisco 49ers. I think another extremely worrisome development if you're the Giants and if you're a fan and if you're ownership looking at, are these the men that we want to continue running our team and our franchise? So that's my initial take on the news and on the developments we've seen here on Monday, November 18th, 2024. Probably have seen Daniel Jones last down as a Giants quarterback. I do think he will succeed once he gets with a better offensive coordinator and a better fit and in a different market. But here and now, we're talking about where the Giants go from here, and that's where we're going to get right into your questions. I saw a super chat already come into the queue. That will be the first comment or question we address. If you pay for a super chat or super sticker, it's a great way to support the channel. I will answer your comment or address your question first. And if you're not going to purchase a super chat or super sticker, I will get to your comments in the queue. But I ask one thing, please hit the like button while we are live here on YouTube, on the PL on NFL YouTube channel, courtesy of the Believe Network here on Talkin' Ball Live with Pat Leonard. And that brings me to thanking our sponsors, MyBookie, Boom Chaga, and Estate 98. Wouldn't be possible without them. MyBookie rolling out the red carpet for sports bettors this football season, risk-free bets on Thursday nights, and a special deal with my promo code Pat's Picks at the link in all my social media profiles. Click that link, make your first deposit, use the promo code Pat's Picks, and you'll get a 100% match on your first deposit of $50 or more, all the way up to $1,000, plus a $10 casino chip. Whether you like betting underdogs, over-unders, whatever it is that you prefer to play. I'm a big prop bets guy and parlays. I love the props. This week, my Jameis Winston overs on over 1.5 touchdowns, over passing yards, and over completions all hit. If you had played those three in a parlay, which I teased up, would have made a lot of money there. Also, my best bet of the week, the Vikings -6 against the Titans, that hit, and the Chargers hit against the Bengals. Unfortunately, the Seahawks made a comeback and beat the Niners, but so 2-1 in Pat's picks, or 2-2 in Pat's picks with the Browns losing as well. But we split even on Pat's picks. Overall, in week 11, I'm 8-5 against the spread going into Monday Night Football, where I had the Cowboys covering a monster spread. The Texans haven't been very good against the spread this year. And then, of course, Cedric Tillman let us down. I had the wrong Browns receiver there. So it's going to be up and down, but we're making you some money. We're way over 500 this season overall and in Pat's Picks. So stick with me. Use that Pat's Picks promo code. Bet anything, anytime, anywhere with MyBookie. Also brought to you by Boom Chaga Mushroom Super Drink, natural extract loaded with anti-inflammatory, immune-boosting antioxidants and heart-healthy compounds. You see it over my shoulder here. You can easily pour this natural liquid supplement into any of your favorite drinks. I pour mine in my coffee every morning and immediately feel the difference. I personally felt a post-workout like energy boost with Boom. Chaga also has the ability to lower cholesterol, reduce inflammation, and improve immune and heart health with its beta-glucans and antioxidants. Go to boomchaga.com today to place your first order. And if you use the discount code TalkinBall25 or access it through this QR code on your screen here, you'll get 25% off your first order on the subscribe and save option. Right now, that means a month's supply on subscribe and save costs you only $30. Start feeling the difference today at boomchaga.com. Again, boomchaga.com. Click the link. Go to boomchaga.com. Use that QR code or that Talkin' Ball 25 promo code. Go to subscribe and save. Get the discount. And then if you love the product, you can stay subscribed. If you don't, or you just want to try that 1 month, you can cancel with no strings attached. Boom Chaga, promise you'll love it. I use it every day. All right. Also brought to you by Estate 98 Coffee. And then we're going to get to our questions and into the queue. Talking Ball with Pat Leonard is brought to you by Estate 98 Coffee. It's a specialty coffee concentrate, perfect for when you want to make a quick cup of coffee and skip the lines. It takes me less than 10 seconds to make a delicious Estate 98 iced coffee or hot coffee. It's great as a mixer for espresso martinis, and each bottle can make up to 16 cups. Go to estate98.com/talkingball to get an exclusive offer for 80% off your first order. We will do later in this chat an Estate 98 Giants trivia question. So when I ask that Giants trivia question, first correct answer in the queue, I will have a free bottle of Estate 98 coffee sent out to you. Thank you for the support. Thanks for those likes. Thanks for subscribing. And we start with Elias Wiskovich with a $5 super chat. Thank you, Elias. Elias says that $5 million we're wasting on Drew Lock could have helped pay for McKinney or elsewhere. Saying it wouldn't change anything about the offseason at quarterback was a lie. You could hear Joe Schoen's, in those moments, usually an executive is not going to sit up there and flat out say, I screwed up. But you could hear in his hesitation, in his answer or non-answer to that question, in the tone in his voice, he knew that the answer to that was, I screwed it up, right? So they're trying to put lipstick on the pig at this point. You're absolutely right. I always go back to forget what you think of Saquon. Okay, put offensive player there, even if you didn't want Saquon, but obviously he's an MVP candidate, so that applies. But even the Brian Burns trade, you could have gone and got Jonathan Grenard, kept your second round pick and drafted a corner, and re-signed Saquon instead of giving Burns that enormous contract and paying that second round pick. Just one example as well of asset mismanagement. But you hit right on the nose there, Elias. Not being able to go to Drew Lock here, it looks even worse considering Russell Wilson with 4 wins as a starter in Pittsburgh. Justin Fields, who was acquired via trade, with 4 wins as a starter in Pittsburgh. Malik Willis, 2 wins with the Green Bay Packers. Jameis Winston, Joe Flacco, both would be guys you could conceivably go to as the Giants in this spot and feel better about your quarterback room. Sam Darnold with a start on a 1-year affordable, I think it was $4.5 million coming from San Francisco going to Minnesota, 8-2 team. That is 3 8-2 teams, the Eagles, the Vikings, and the Steelers, who have benefited based on the Giants' inaction and mistakes at the quarterback position and elsewhere. Great point there, Elias. Thank you for getting us kick-started with that super chat. Jim, thank you for checking in. He says, what do you think of the Giants? Is there a Giants reaction to Bobby Okereke giving Saquon a thumbs up? Nothing yet. We haven't been allowed in the locker room yet, Jim. We will be in the locker room again on Wednesday. So Bobby Okereke liking the Saquon Barkley Instagram. Darius Slayton saying on Nick McLeod's Instagram, he's a free man. These are all signs of what I've been explaining to you guys is going on behind the scenes, is that the locker room and players in general do not appreciate how the Giants front office and management has handled them and how they've treated guys on the way out. It's not necessarily getting cut or being, asked to play for another team or not as good of a fit. Guys understand that business part of it exists. It's more about how it's been handled, how they're treated. And then also, guys like Bobby Okereke, guys like even Dexter Lawrence, I'm very interested in how he feels right now. We haven't really talked to him about the Nick McLeod situation, but we know he's erupted on the sidelines. He also did not play coming out of the half in Germany. Not exactly sure what that's about. The Giants haven't given us a straight and honest answer there. So a lot of signs of discontent coming from the locker room. And I think the support for Saquon, in my opinion, reflects a reality that the players knew right away that the Giants made a mistake there. Kayvon Thibodeau was on the record on a podcast saying that they should have paid Saquon before they paid Daniel Jones. That dynamic exists, and that's where it brings us today. K-Mac says it didn't have to be this way. That's right, K-Mac. The Giants are in a tough position now, but they also created this situation. You don't pick up the Daniel Jones option. You give him that contract. You sign Drew Lock. You thought Tyrod Taylor was going to come back here. You didn't. All of this stuff goes into the pot. Not to mention, even Brian Daboll said flat out today that the reason they haven't been able to progress with Daniel Jones since 2022, in fact, the reason it's regressed, he said, was not just on Daniel, it's on the whole offensive performance. It's on me. But that's where we're at. We're at the fact that the Giants hired an offensive head coach who can't get more out of his offense. The Giants' offensive numbers are pathetic. In fact, I was just on the radio in Albany on ESPN Albany earlier. And one thing I said to them, and this is something we've talked about on our podcast on Talkin' Ball with Pat Leonard, going into this season, I think the Giants, even if they didn't win games, there was a clear path to Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen and the Giants showing, listen, there's a lot of missing pieces still here, but we're building something real and right. And I thought the easiest way and the best way, and the way Daboll had to do that, but could do that, was by, if you're losing games 30-27 or 31-28 or 35-34, or even consistently losing games, 23-20 even, you could say we're putting points on the board. We're just not there fully. We had the turnover at defensive coordinator, which while it was our fault, now we're digging ourselves out from under that. But that's not what they've been able to do. And that's what they're in a tough spot here with, going to DeVito, trying to convince the locker room that it's the right move, even though it might not be, even though it might regress and get worse, right? All of these things are major concerns because if you look at the Giants, they have some bad low-scoring losses, right? The Vikings 28-6, the Eagles 28-3, even the Bengals was only 17-7, but the Giants offense looked like they could have played 12 quarters that day, only scored 7 points. They had 5 field goals against the Dallas Cowboys, one of the worst teams in the league. And then some of these other supposed close games, right? 17 points to a Carolina Panthers team that's allowing 32, right? And the Giants, obviously the lowest scoring team in the NFL at 15.6. So that's one of the reasons why Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen are under so much fire and pressure here. All right. So Jim Osborne, Jim says, Pat, going with DeVito because he gives them best chance to win. What's the strategy? Because Schoen is going to draw heat for paying $5 million for a backup who was really third string the entire time. Well, it also reflects poorly on their evaluation process because they thought Drew was going to give Daniel a run for his money in training camp, and he didn't. They didn't give Tommy DeVito a chance to give Drew a run for the second backup quarterback spot in training camp. And I asked Daboll because we don't get to see every full practice, right? We only see the beginnings. So my question to Daboll was, has Tommy outplayed Drew in practice? He could not say yes. He said they've both shown some good things, right? And here's the reason I'm going with Tommy. But the reason that's an important question is because the players know who's the better player based on what's happening in practice, not just, guys' track records throughout their career. It's also just if they walk off the field every day and they think Tommy's better, then Tommy's better. If they walk off the field every day and they're like, hey, Drew's clearly better, then Drew's the guy you have to go to. You can't go to the quarterback that the locker room knows is not giving you a better chance to win. Antonio says Drew Lock is a pretty expensive third stringer. They don't even want to play him over DeVito. Yeah, really bad look there for Joe Schoen and for the Giants. Antonio says, any updates on injured players, Pat, like Pinnock, Muasau, Kayvon, Slayton? Nothing definitive yet, Antonio. We expect to have more on Wednesday. Doesn't sound like a sure thing, though, that Kayvon is going to be back this week based on how Daboll hedged there. On the other guys, we will see. I would throw Jalen Hyatt into that mix as well as a guy who's been banged up. Not exactly sure where that stands, but we're looking for more info on that. Antonio says, what is your record prediction the rest of the season? Well, I picked them to go 4-13 this season. I picked them to go 2-8 at the bye week. Obviously, if you're on my bookie or you're a sports bettor, get on my bookie, use Pat's picks, and think about it, man. We get some wrong, but if I'm getting stuff like that right, a season prediction, you can make a lot of money on this stuff. Let's tail it. Let's get in while the crystal ball is hot. But to answer your question, I think 4-13 was my prediction, and I think that's the ceiling. So I would say that's their ceiling. I don't know if they're going to get to 4 wins, though. I think they could end up losing out and only winning 2. Maybe they get to 3. Maybe they get to 4. They have the Buccaneers, Cowboys, Saints, Ravens, Falcons, Colts, and Eagles. I would say the games they have a chance to win in there is the Colts. And, to me, it's hard to see anybody other than Colts as on the board that you could possibly beat there. That's how I feel about it. So I would say the ceiling is 4, most likely 3, but 2 is on the table. That's what I would say. I do think there's a chance that DeVito starts and then we end up seeing Locke eventually here as well. I think that's possible. So, but I think Daniels played his last down for the Giants. Jim says if Locke was good, given a chance, he could be a bridge quarterback next season. I doubt DeVito is a bridge, full season starter. Your thoughts? I totally agree, Jim. I think, listen, the Giants know DeVito is not the answer because if they thought he was, they would have had him playing prominent and competing prominent snaps in the summer. Even after everything that happened last year, all the feel-good stuff, I think they're well aware based on his high sack percentage, how bad some of the losses were, and how his wins were even propped up. Don't forget this. And listen, when I criticize or couch the things that Tommy did last year, I've got nothing against Tommy. I love Tommy. He's great. Like Tommy's a great dude. I wish the best for him. I'm glad that he's accomplished everything he has. I hope he continues to get a gazillion endorsements. And he's always been nice to me and everybody in the locker room. And I think he works his butt off. So, but the reality is last season, the defense forced 11 turnovers in his 3 wins, and the special teams even got an extra one against the Washington Commanders. And so when you think about that, that was a really crazy, fortuitous run, aided and abetted by the support of Wink Martindale's defense. And if there's one thing the Giants don't do anymore, it's force turnovers, right? On defense, they're in the bottom third of turnovers forced and takeaways by NFL defenses. In fact, there are only 3 teams with fewer turnovers forced than the Giants. It's the Browns, Titans, and Raiders. So the Raiders have only forced 5 turnovers this season. The Titans and the Browns have only forced 7. And then the Giants are in it looks like a 5-way tie for 8 turnovers forced. That's the Cowboys, Jaguars, Patriots, Giants, and Jets. And so the bottom line is, we all know DeVito's the one game where DeVito really made some plays with the game on the line to win was that Green Bay game. He made some key plays and throws. He had 10 carries for 71 yards, and he had a nice throw to Wan'Dale Robinson there on that game-sealing drive. But most of what happened that helped the Giants when he was in there, it was, the friendliest way you could describe it is complimentary football. That's the friendliest way towards the offense you could describe it. So my point is that now you're throwing Tommy out there against Todd Bowles' defense, and without a defense on the Giants side that takes the ball away. I know Baker Mayfield's been a little bit loose with the rock lately, but I think this is a recipe for a complete disaster. I think an entire house cleaning is on the table here in New York. That's what I believe. All right. Let's see. British Gridiron says, let's go British friendly stream. What's up, British? Says, when Shane said it would be a football decision, do you think he was referring to starting Tommy over Locke and Locke's $5 million contract? No, British, what I think he was doing, and what I think a lot of people in football I talked to thought he was doing, is the Giants, they don't want to be open to a grievance from Daniel Jones and his agents and his camp that he was benched purely to avoid paying him more money. So they're trying to make it sound like, and have their friends in the media continue to say, it's football, it's only football, it's only football, because they don't want people saying it was the money. They don't want people saying it was only the injury guarantee. They don't want a grievance being filed through the NFLPA that the Giants are making decisions to avoid paying players money. So that's the way people viewed that. I held Shane's feet to the fire at that point because, that was too general of a comment and term. To me, it was you purely have to answer the question, yes or no. Are you making the decision based on what you think gives your team the best chance to win? That's what matters. Are you making the decision based on what gives your team the best chance to win? Daniel says, Giants incapable of making a correct decision. This is another one. Shane should have just let Daniel Jones finish the season. This would lead to an epic train wreck end of season. Fire coach and GM. Well, I think they're trying to protect themselves and save their jobs and also save that money and make a contract decision. And it's all tied up in a ball of a mess that they created for themselves. So, like I've said plenty of times, the Giants are in a really difficult spot, but they're the ones who put themselves in it. Thank you so much for that, Daniel. Always supportive of our channel. Really appreciate you. Antonio says, hypothetically, why would you not give Drew Lock a shot? And if he actually somehow were to play well, you re-sign him to be the veteran QB along with the rookie QB. Right, exactly. Brett says, tear it all down. They benched the most heart in the league. Oh, so meaning Daniel Jones plays with a lot of heart. Yeah, I'm interested to get into the locker room. I'm interested to hear what the players have to say about this. I'll say that. NYC says, any rumors and innuendo about how Steve Tisch is feeling? It's sort of a help us Obi-Wan Kenobi, you're our only hope type of situation. I'm beginning to wonder where the heck the Tisch family is. I mean, this team, they own half the team here. It's time to hear from them. I mean, it's beyond time to hear from the Tisch family. Steve Tisch the Tisch family in general. I mean, they own half the team, don't they? Where are they? Where, why aren't we hearing from them on what's going on? My only take is this, NYC, this is the only acceptable reality now from the Tisch side. It's that, just as John Mara said, listen, we're not changing it during the season, but he said, I don't anticipate making any changes after the season either. But him saying that, I think, is him saying, listen, I'm ruling out a change during the year. After the year, you'll hear from us one way or another, right? So that's when I think, I don't know if we hear publicly from the Tisches at that point based on the lack of public comments now, but I do believe, that's the only explanation, the only satisfactory way that Steve Tisch and the Tisch family can rationalize their lack of speaking now. We need to hear how they're going to weigh in, right? John says, could have spent the $5 million towards Saquon. I don't understand the lock signing. NYC says, how about the $47.8 million we have on the cap for Jones? Yeah, so the Giants get out of money, obviously, for next year on the cap hit, based on the fact that they would not activate the injury guarantee, so that helps them getting out of it. But of course, yes, the money they committed to Daniel Jones undercuts them in a huge way here. So, this was a situation where the Giants could have, so go back to the offseason after the 2022 year, okay? Going into 2023, spring 2023. Joe Schoen and the Giants at one point had adjudged that the right move was to tag Daniel Jones and pay Saquon Barkley. The fact that when they were unable to get Saquon done, you could argue about why they didn't. The fact they were not able to get him done, and their process and their pivot was, let's do the total opposite of that and sign Daniel and tag Saquon, right? That threw them into a mess, because while they did give themselves a trap door out after this second season with Daniel Jones, the amount of money they committed to him, the amount of missteps Joe Schoen acknowledged making in order to justify the contract, and based on his and Daboll's belief that they had now found their quarterback and their team, that is the part that is really hard to stomach as you get to this point in the process. The fact that they are going back to Tommy DeVito now, benching Daniel Jones, the guy you paid. They don't have Saquon. They couldn't add Neighbors to Saquon. They just replaced Saquon with Neighbors. They now don't trust the backup they gave $5 million guaranteed. They're going back to DeVito, who they know is not good enough, because they've shown you that even after the feel-good story of last year. It all just compounds. Jacob says, smack that like and sub button for the best beat reporter in the business. Thank you so much, Jacob, always for saying that, being here, supporting us. Can't thank you enough, and also can't reiterate enough what Jacob is saying. The subscriptions and the likes. Thank you to everybody, especially doing the super chats and the super stickers, and to all of you supporting my bookie, Boom Chaga, and Estate 98, which is the best way to support our podcast. But at the bare minimum, those likes while we are live, that continues to generate more awareness on the Giants fans and from NFL fans around the country that we're live, that we're here, that we're doing this on the Believe Network and on Talking Ball with Pat Leonard on the YouTube channel, PL on NFL. It really helps. Takes you 2 seconds. Hit the like button while we are live if you like what we are doing. All right. Let's see. We have some more super chats in the queue. It looks like it's Danny says, Pat, if you get a chance, can you ask John Mara if he still feels they did everything possible to screw this kid's up, and if he's still glad they re-signed Daniel Jones? Looking forward to that next opportunity, Danny. John Mara, one interesting thing he said that kind of contradicted a little bit. So when he gave the vote of confidence in October to Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen through the end of the season, when he was asked about Daniel Jones, he essentially said, I'm not going to get into evaluating specific players right now. But he did say that there are a lot of other things going wrong with this offense and reasons why we're underperforming than just the quarterback, was essentially what he said. So I believe that ownership does not view this as just a Daniel Jones problem. And I think all of the other reasons why They're not winning. They're not performing well. I think Dable is out of here at the end of the year. I think the only question is whether Joe Shane sticks it out. That's my opinion. All right, let's see. D-Kid says, pretty incredible. They have bypassed Drew Lock, another $5 million mistake. Jacob says, Pat, if Jones gets injured on Giants property, do they still have to pay him? Yes. So it's not just if he gets injured in a game. It's also if he gets injured in practice and if he gets injured, let's say, lifting weights in the facility. That's why Dable was asked if Jones was going to be separated from the team entirely. He said, no, he's here. But I'm not quite sure he's going to be on the practice field. I don't think that's the case. We will see. We'll follow up on that on Wednesday. John says Malik Neighbors, went from Jaden Daniels cannon to Daniel Jones not being able to throw more than 30 yards, and now it's DeVito. That's a great point, though, about regardless of what anyone thinks about the quarterbacks he's talking about there and the descriptions, what John's alluding to, I think this is a question, right? How is Malik Neighbors going to react if Tommy DeVito comes in and it's worse, right? I mean, you saw his body language when Drew Lock wasn't able to get him the ball in the fourth quarter against the Eagles. Jacob says, Pat, why DeVito? He took us out of the running for a quarterback last year. The defense took you out of the running as well as DeVito there in that stretch is what happened. I mean, they got to go to somebody if they're benching Daniel, right, Jacob? So, I think the question is whether they're going to a quarterback who's going to continue to help them lose or if they really believe he's going to help them win games. And here's the thing, Jacob. Going back to the Chase Young Bowl and the Giants beat Washington, they got the number 4 pick instead of number 2, and then they end up drafting Andrew Thomas instead of Chase Young. That's the better player you got, right? So, you do that type of thing, and you can't say, oh, we know at number 2, we're going to definitely get a number player at number 4, and we have to lose because of that. If you do, that's tanking. Now, it can work. Sometimes it does work. It has worked, right? But you still got to not screw up the pick, which is something that plenty of general managers have done, right? I mean, the Giants, even though Saquon Barkley is now an MVP candidate, they still obviously would have been better drafting Josh Allen in 2018, right? When Dave Gettleman was here. So, if the Giants had had a different pick this past year, it would have benefited them because they would have gotten Jaden Daniels or Drake May, who both look like very good players, right? But hard to play that game, Jacob. And I also think they need to show some progress and some results to keep their jobs here. I don't think that they can continue to bottom out. Like, they just lost to the Carolina Panthers, and now they're putting Tommy DeVito in. I think this is a train off the tracks. Cam says, I'm stupid, and he can see why players and coaches don't mess with me. Cam obviously has no idea what he's talking about because coaches and players do mess with me. Let's see. John says, there is absolutely zero chance in my mind that Deion Sanders would allow Joe Shane to draft his son if the Giants have the first pick. Also, be curious what Pat Shurmur, former Giants head coach, offensive coordinator, would have to say about that dynamic. Focus says Jones had plenty of opportunities. Oh, yeah. No, Daniel had plenty of opportunities. No doubt about it. This was always coming. They're underperforming. He hasn't played well enough. I just fight back against the reason that he's the only problem. That's all. Iconic says Pat, will not starting Lock be a bad organizational move for Shane in next year's free agency? That's a great question, Iconic, especially because Drew Lock moved his family across the country because he thought he was going to have a chance to play here. It looked like an obvious chance to compete and play here, and now he's not playing. A very bad look for the Giants. And I do believe, Iconic, that that's maybe the one way that it'll get all the way up to Joe Shane from an accountability standpoint, is all of these players believing that they don't do things the right way here. How loud does that continue to be in order to impact negatively the way that you can acquire players? I think that's a really good question. Sam says Daniel Jones gives us the best chance to win. Sam, I do believe that. I agree with that. NYC says the problems run deeper than Jones. Pat is 100% correct. Shane is a joke. D Kit says, no, Pat. You cannot like how they've done it with Jones, but please do not downplay how bad he's been for the franchise. D Kit, I just think, listen, I was right there with their judgment this spring that, oh, we made a mistake on the contract, right? So go get a quarterback. Bo Nix just threw for 300 plus yards and 4 touchdowns in a blowout win over the Falcons. What are we doing? Like, you can't say you don't like the quarterback and then not replace him and not sign a true backup to him. And now what? Oh, there was nothing we could do. What do you mean there was nothing you could do? Russell Wilson's leading the 8-2 Steelers. But D-Kid, I don't disagree with you on this is why I know it's pointless to keep parsing this, but you bring me back to the middle of it, which is correct, which is I understand that the right move here is to go find your next quarterback based on all the factors. Frankly, I think Daniel Jones would be better off not being here anyway. My point is just how poorly they've handled it, and I don't like how they've scapegoated him on the way out and publicly blamed him. I don't like that. I don't like how they've done it. Again, like I said, this is a business. Guys get cut all the time, traded all the time, whatever. It's a business. I just don't like how they've done it. That's all. Focus says, I wish Daniel Jones the best of luck wherever he ends up. Me too. Steve says, come on, Pat, unfairly scapegoated. You've seen the same games as the rest of us, and Daniel has not been good enough, period. But I think the rhetoric coming out of the Giants has been they are good enough if they had better quarterback play, and I don't agree with that. But Steve, you're right. He hasn't been good enough lately. Obviously, there were plays in that Carolina Panthers game that he missed that he should have made. No doubt about it. Sam says, Daniel Jones gives the Giants the best chance to win football games. I do believe that. D-Kid says, but the same passion that people had with regard to Jones' damage to the franchise, please direct that now to Shane and Dable, who have caused just as much, if not more damage. NYC says, this regime clearly doesn't have a greater plan. Their goal has always been to win microtransactions in the court of public opinion. What a comment by NYC. That is so well said, better said than anything I think I've ever said, because it just gets right to the heart of the matter. I think that is perfectly said by you there, NYC. I mean, I said it in the story I filed for the Daily News today. I said, going in the toilet in year 3 of a regime and benching a player you paid $82 million isn't part of a master plan. Neither is skipping over the backup you paid $5 million as the insurance policy. Like that, none of that is a plan. Losing last year so badly that you were in position possibly to draft a quarterback last year, that wasn't part of the plan either. Like the fact that they were even in position possibly to get a quarterback in last year's draft before winning their way out of it, that wasn't part of the plan. None of this was part of the plan. Totally agree with you, NYC. Oh, by the way, can we just say, can I get a point for calling that Daniel Jones's benching and the news was going to be leaked to the national media? I told you guys that, right? I told you it was going to happen on Sunday. It happened on Monday. So I was 1 day late. I was 1 day off, but you know, you got that target emoji, you know, the bullseye emoji. That's what you can throw up there. Mal says, and here we are. NYC says they do not know what their ideal team looks like, let alone how to build it. K-Max says they're throwing blind darts. Tariq says, don't pay the running backs. Who are the clowns that came up with that? There are levels. Daniel Jones over Saquon, crash dummies, won stupid prizes, zero credibility, all of this predictable. I mean, there was literally a graphic on one of the primetime football television telecasts, either Sunday or Monday or Thursday a week ago. And it said the return of the running back, the year of the running back, had guys like Saquon, Derrick Henry, Joe Mixon, like all the Aaron Jones, like all these guys who have been paid at running back and have augmented their teams and proven that they are worth that money. What I always said about Saquon Barkley with the Giants is this. Saquon Barkley is a great player, really good talent. Drafting him when they did was wrong. They weren't ready for him. They weren't a team that needed one more piece. Dave Gettleman thought, I'm going to give Eli Manning Saquon Barkley and we're going to take off and go on one more Super Bowl run. They were never fully understanding what they were. That's what the Giants don't do well. And they're not the only team, right? They're not the only team. Look at the Dallas Cowboys right now. The Dallas Cowboys are an embarrassment when it comes to thinking who they are versus what they really are, right? An embarrassment. But this is one thing the Giants consistently don't do well enough, is to judge who they are and what their plan should be because of it. John says, Pat Locke was told he would be quarterback 2 at signing. Seeing how they lied to Locke Does this impact other potential free agents from trusting the Giants' words? The Iconic, I believe, came up, asked that question as well. I think that's a very good point, and one we will find out in the spring. I do think, I know I sound like a parrot repeating myself. I do think that the way the Giants have treated people from the front office in this regime is going to cost them their jobs. I don't know how it's going to manifest itself coming down the pike and in conversations with ownership, but I do think that reality exists. Sam says, Pat is really yapping my ears off with these ads. Sam, the reality of the real world is this. This can't be launched and done in the time and effort and the talent, that I bring on this podcast, like Benny Fowler and all the guests we have on this show and what we're continuing to build. We're going to be on Super Bowl Radio Row this year. Really excited for all of that. The sponsors are what makes it happen. So thank you for listening to the sponsorships and also understanding that this is the real world and you got to pay. You get what you pay for. I'm a big believer in that, whether it's fashion with Salarettas that I'm wearing to all my Giants games for my arrival videos, whether it's a car that you buy, whether it's a house you buy in this market, and whether it's podcasts that you listen to. You get what you pay for. NYC says, yes, John, and the list of reasons to not trust them is long, not just that. Undefined says, hey, Pat, ask Daboll why he thinks he should get a fourth year when Harbaugh has turned around San Diego or Los Angeles in less than a year. Well, you know what? And Undefined, that's not even a question for Brian Daboll anymore. You're absolutely right. But that's a question for John Mara and Steve Tisch. Tariq says they chose Daniel Jones over Saquon Barkley. What kind of next level stupid would do such a thing? Johnny says Joe Shane has to go. Sam says Darius Slayton was talking about I don't know. I don't understand that. Tony says, Pat, are you worried any player is going to try and choke you this Wednesday? No. The players have always responded well to me. And also, one interesting thing about our business is I think the most important thing about our business, and not just football, just in general, the most important thing in our business is to answer to what you said or wrote or put out there the next day in the locker room or wherever it is. Like, you show up. Basically, that's what's important. So I'm always accountable to what I say, whether it's positive, negative, whatever. And I've had plenty of positive, constructive conversations with guys. Sometimes they don't agree with what I'm saying, but I think they always understand where I'm coming from and what I'm basing my opinions on. And I've always been upfront and honest. And, you have run-ins with some people, but no, the way you're describing how you feel the locker room feels about me and where you're directing your angst and frustration with the team is not the way that the players have addressed or directed their frustrations. So that's not reflective. Let's see. William says, why do you keep saying Daboll has lost the locker room? Where are you getting this from? Has a player told you this? It's obvious why Locke is not playing. They want to see if DeVito can be a backup. Definitely not what he said. They think he can give them a spark this year now. That's why they're putting him in. And then, yes, I do know that the locker room is wearing down, has worn down. I think you saw Dexter Lawrence screaming at the defensive backs and the defensive backs coach over there on the sideline in Pittsburgh. We still want to know why he was benched at the start of the second half in Germany. There are other signs behind the scenes, things I can't report on the record, frankly, but guys who are out on this process, this operation, guys are going through the motions. And I think that whether it gets louder, that may end up becoming the reason why people like yourself further understand what I'm saying or not. But I think that the absence of results, along with the frustrations about how the games are being mismanaged, how poor the offense is and can't support the defense, how the defense can't stop the run, guys starting to slump their shoulders and question roster decisions, like the Nick McLeod decision was the latest one. You've seen Saquon Barkley out there indicting their process last year and talking further and more publicly about how poorly and nastily they handled his situation. And so all of these things are kind of accumulating and building. We'll just find out whether that continues to come to the forefront in all these games. But you've had players quitting on the field already. All the signs are there. So obviously you could not trust what I'm telling you, but I'm telling you what's happening. AJ thinks he can see DeVito winning at least 2 to 3 games. What do you think, Pat? 2 would be my ceiling. I had them winning 4 games at the start of the year. I think looking at their remaining schedule, I guess the only way they could get to 3 is if the Eagles rest everybody in that final game, and then the Giants win that game as well against a bunch of backups in Philadelphia. I mean, I guess that's potentially possible. And that could get them to 5 wins, instead of 4. But I think the Colts game is the only one I look at on their schedule right now, and I say, I could see them winning that game possibly. But yeah, I think 4 total, so 2 more wins is their ceiling. John says Steve Tisch should tell John Mara to kick rocks and that he will take over football decisions. Shane should be fired today along with Daniel Jones and promote Brandon Brown. Brown's been involved in all these decisions as well, though. Would these quarterbacks win with the Giants? Donna is saying about other quarterbacks they could have brought in. Well, I guess we'll never know, as the meme goes. William says Locke is trash, but even if they did start him, they probably want to get a top pick so they can grab the quarterback that they want. That has to be part of it, William. I think you're right about that. Tariq says DeVito only looked good because of Saquon Barkley. Stop the delusions, and because of the defense. I think it's going to be a huge wake-up call. NYC says if we have the first pick, they're all getting fired. Yes, I agree. Like, I think winning only 1 more or no more games and this descending into chaos is not a recipe for keeping the current regime. Marjorie thinks DeVito is much better than Daniel Jones. Interesting. Sam thinks the only 2 quarterbacks in the NFL worse than Daniel are DeVito and Drew Lock. Hard to fathom says Dable saying it's on him and the offense is just trying to save face. The reality is Jones has had 6 years to show what he can do. He has consistently shown he's a below average player. Also, it's Dable walking back. Like, obviously he was there after the Pittsburgh game, blaming it on the quarterback, right? And blaming the key turnover on the quarterback. And now it's like, oh yeah, we're not putting it just on the QB. But we all know Joe Shane was there on the sideline saying the Bears GM, it must be nice not looking for quarterbacks now. Dable blaming Daniel publicly. So that's where I go with that. But yeah, obviously, listen, anyone who thinks I'm debating benching Daniel Jones at this point, and this was the obvious result of what we've seen. The team's 2-8, right? He's got the injury guarantee. The contract structure a certain way. You're taking him out, okay? We all knew it was coming, and we all know he hasn't played well enough. So no one's debating that here. Brett says, I'm kind of happy for Daniel Jones. He can go where fans want him from the start. I agree. Tariq says, Daniel Jones is better than DeVito. Stop the cap. Sam says, DeVito played horribly last season. The defense handed him those wins. Barb says, never thought I'd say this ever, but I don't care if we lose every game for better picks. Wow. Yeah, Barb, that's, what you have to wonder now is, have John Mara and Steve Tisch quietly behind the scenes accepted that the best thing for them is to have a high pick? And is this a tank, right? You and I know that John Mara says if there's one thing he will never do, it is tank, right? But are they aware that by benching Daniel and going to Tommy, they're more likely to go 2-15 or 3-14, and it's going to give them a high draft pick? Are they signing off on that? Or based on what they've said, based on what John Mara has said, he's looking for better play and progress, right? So that's what John Mara has said. So what are they looking for here? That is the question. All right. Let's see. What do we have here? Oh, by the way, let me see. Donna says, in 5 years, Daniel Jones will be on another team and come back to beat the Giants. We'll bookmark that one, Donna, see if that comes true. Almighty Finesse wants Shedeur Sanders. Sal says, what are people afraid of when it comes to DeVito winning games? He's not any good. Shaguna says the Giants are going to draft Carson Beck. Shogunna says then Brian Flores will win the lawsuit. That'll be an interesting offseason topic because that's still hovering there. Almighty says, what Singletary contract will he be cut in the offseason? Dable likes him, obviously, but that has not panned out well. So there's a good chance. But isn't it funny? There's another contract. You're asking about whether the guy they gave, $5.5 million at running back, are they going to cut him 1 year into his contract? Like, this is the general manager and the operation we're talking about here. What are we doing? Shaguna says Sanders will be a Raider. Dion's not letting that happen coming to New York. Starboy says Joe Shane is a coward for hiding behind Dable as they bench his franchise quarterback. Clean house. Starboy, I do think bad look for the general manager to come out at the bye week and then do this press conference and act like, well, we'll make the decision. We don't know. And then let Dable answer for it. I think that's a great point. George says, do you think they will still get fired at the end of the season, Pat? I do. There's people who don't think that, but I do. Michael says, Pat, good questions during the Daboll press conference. Daboll stated that Tommy's experience last year and overall comprehension of the system as 2 reasons he was selected to start. Right. Yes, exactly. But he also said we have confidence in Drew too. This isn't a reflection on Drew. That's an impossible thing to say and ridiculous because obviously if you thought he was any good, you'd be put him in the game, right? Unless you're looking for a higher draft pick and you think Tommy being worse helps you lose while you pretend you're trying to win, right? So they're really in a difficult spot. No good answers there. QWERTY says a once proud organization with some goober / rapper showing his watch. D-Kid says, is there any truth to a new rumor that they wanted Jones to be the number 2 and he declined? Haven't heard that. I'm a fan says Giants must draft a quarterback in 2025. No excuses. I want a dual threat quarterback. Draft Jalen Milroe out of Alabama. Finesse wants Shedeur Sanders. Will be interesting to see. Tariq says it's crazy how ESPN's narrative controls people. ESPN says don't pay running backs and fans repeat it. And bum organizations sign Daniel Jones and let Saquon walk. Ugh. Shaguna says Shedeur is not coming to New York to pay high taxes, and Vegas is a tax-free state, plus Brady is there. N4 says, finally, a beat writer that doesn't do damage control for the Giants front office. Thank you, N4, for saying that. Because I know I got some questions earlier from people angry at me or saying, that players are going to choke me or whatever. But listen to this. I am going to tell you where the information is taking me. That's what I'm going to do, right? I'm going to try to provide full context. I'm not going to tell you something Monday and omit something from Friday that's relevant. I'm going to give you the full context of the decision. And I've just been covering a lot of losing football here with the Giants. Now, obviously, I cover the NFL as well for the New York Daily News and here on the Talkin' Ball with Pat Leonard podcast on the Believe Network. But the base and the foundation of what I do is I'm at the Giants every day covering the Giants as well. And kind of my hands into this team since 2016. And frankly, N4, that's part of what I don't like about this process. Forget the Daniel Jones, whether he deserved to be benched. Obviously, he's benched. Okay, it's done. What I don't like is the Giants, both overtly and through the national media, constantly reinforcing to fans and to the public, it's Daniel Jones. It's Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones's fault. He's the reason we're bad. It's only Daniel. We would have had 6. We would be 6-4 instead of 2-8 if it wasn't Daniel Jones, right? That's what they're constantly hitting you with, right? Oh, there's another misplay by Daniel Jones, right? Now, he has plenty of missed opportunities. Yes, he's part of the reason they're 2-8. Of course he is. But to me, I'm always going to try to be the person giving you, what I think is the truth, but at least my version of the informed truth and not some version of something that somebody just told me. Sal says the Giants should cut Daniel now. Flippendistical Production says the Danny Donuts era has ended. We all gave Sir Donuts our belief, and he gave us back great effort. Truly great effort at times, but unfortunately you can't polish a bad quarterback, right? Gotcha. Okay. Donna says, is Jones a backup next year? Possibly. A team will be able to pay him very little in order to, or I should say, be able to pay him a lot less money than he's used to making now, pay him backup money for sure. That is something that we will see here with Daniel Jones next year. There's going to be enough teams in the NFL who need a quarterback that you're going to find a landing spot, I think, where he can find playing time and give a team something positive and encouraging. Here's the other thing about the narrative element of the Daniel Jones thing. The Giants are experts at running people out of town and burying their reputations. And Daniel Jones can be not good enough and not worth the contract. He can still be a guy who can help another NFL team. So don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, because Daniel Jones is he's a good person. He works hard as a player, and he's going to help some other team. Chris says the problem with football is quarterbacks get all the blame and all the praise. Well, coaches, general managers, quarterbacks, as Mike Tomlin said, that's why they pay me the big bucks, right? To make those decisions and be accountable, right? Let's see. British Gridiron says, how much has ownership had their thumb on the scale with all of the past mistakes? Did they force Shane to keep Daniel Jones and Saquon after the playoff season? They say that everyone was involved in that and it wasn't ownership forcing them to do it. Certainly, Joe Shane admitting at his press conference that he made key mistakes coming out of 2022 and not putting it on ownership or continuing to say it was somebody else or imply it was somebody else and not him. That to me showed you Joe Shane knew very well that, he made that decision and it was his mistake. Almighty Finesse says hire Vrabel or Belichick. But British, to your point, ownership does not skate here and can't skate. Do you think Pat Shermer might have badmouthed the Giants organization to Deion Sanders, which will influence his decision not to let Shedeur Sanders to get drafted by the Giants? I can't speak for Pat. I don't know what he would tell Deion, but I can tell you that he would probably be able to tell him pluses and minuses, right? Like if you asked me, about one of my experiences with something where it's something where I worked or, whatever it is, I could give you, here's the positives and here's the negatives or, whatever. Like, I think that's what you'll find. Bo Nix, another missed quarterback, says, I'm a fan. No doubt. Brett says, Jones goes to the Cowboys and they make the playoffs. Haha, Wink should have been the coach. Wink should have been the coach. No doubt about it. The Giants worse off without Martindale here. Really what happened is Daboll's temper and his lack of game management and his finger pointing at the defense last year, what it ended up doing was it ran a really good coach out of town, and Martindale's defense was helping to conceal the personnel weaknesses of Joe Shane's roster and the inability of Daboll's offense to really function. So now Daboll doesn't have that security blanket, and you're seeing the results in the team. Candyman says, Pat, you have to admit with a better quarterback, we could have won a couple more games. Wouldn't make a playoff team, but we'd at least be competitive. Well, Candy, that's what I said, is that maybe the Giants could have been 4-6 right now instead of 2-8 if Daniel had made a few more of those plays that he didn't make. But you're not talking about a good team with a different quarterback here. They're certainly not a quarterback away, which is what they're trying to sell. Michael says, dissing Saquon by telling him to circle back if he doesn't get what he wants. Drew Lock signing him as the number 2. Daniel Jones by overtly trying to trade up for a quarterback. Really bad look for Shane. I agree. Joey Green says, with this weak quarterback draft, would the Giants be better trading back, getting picks, and signing Justin Fields, or trading for a vet? Joey, I'd feel more comfortable in that sense about trading for an established vet rather than just getting some stopgap who, like, let's face it, like somebody said earlier, there's no guarantee some of these other quarterbacks that the Giants could have signed would have succeeded here. But Doesn't that reflect poorly on Brian Daboll and on Joe Schoen's roster? Like, you're talking about they wouldn't be able to support those quarterbacks the same way. So if Kevin O'Connell can get something out of Sam Darnold, if the Giants couldn't get the same thing out of him, who does that reflect on? And so if the reality is, well, Justin Fields wouldn't have necessarily do the same thing for the Giants next year, because why? Because they don't know how to get the most out of him, because the coach can't scheme it up as the offensive play caller, right? So that's, I think, the unfortunate reality you run into there. If you're not drafting a quarterback, I think you're trading for a guy who can play, who you know can play, and you're spending the assets on that. But, I think they're drafting a quarterback. It's just a question on who's drafting. J Rock says, if the Giants don't have a top 2 pick at the end of the season, who do they pick? That's a great question. I think they trade up for one. Paul says, does this regime have any clue as to what they're doing? I do not believe they have an adequate plan in place. No. Paulo says, who would have thought that Hard Knocks would destroy the perception of the organization almost beyond repair before Thanksgiving? Me. Good point, though. I know your question was rhetorical. Michael says, did it ever occur to Shane that it was Saquon who got the ball into the end zone in red zone territory? Well, that's what I said. And also, if you remember, that's what Tim McDonald said. We're removing our touchdowns. We're removing all these things. Like, what's our offensive identity? And that point got overlooked and ignored. British wants to draft Travis Hunter instead of a quarterback, have him play DB and key drives on offense that's going to win more games. Sirius says, you do realize they had Tyrod for a few years, right? Would have kept him, but was too expensive and was always hurt. That is not why. They tried to re-sign him. They kept Tyrod on the bench last year for a healthy Tommy DeVito, so he didn't re-sign here. Let's see. Brett says, before yesterday, Pat, we were tied in drops with the Eagles, Commanders, and Cowboys combined. Yeah, no, tons of drops. I know Slayton's had a bunch of drops. Theo Johnson has a bunch of drops, to name 2 guys. Everybody's been involved. Tyrone Tracy dropped on the interception in the red zone there. Michael says, what bothers me most are all the Italian stereotype jokes that come along with DeVito. Not all Italians are like that. Yeah, no, agree, Michael. Yeah, it's like not every Giants fan is like that. Not every Italian certainly is like that. It plays into like the Jersey Shore stuff. And it's, it's a sideshow is what it is. It's a sideshow. It turns him into like a mascot instead of a football player too. I don't like it. Feel good story about him personally, but I agree with you. Amani points out that the Chargers have Herbert already there. That probably helps a hell of a lot. Yeah, well, also, though, that team was in total disrepair, even with Herbert there last year. A2 says, we win, Daniel Jones is gone. Let's see. All right. All right, let's see. Who is next? A2 says, in my opinion, they signed Locke to not be a real threat to Jones. Now that they're done with Daniel Jones, Daboll is going with the guy that he's seen win games. Go, Cutlets, go. Poor Tommy won't be able to leave his house if he wins 3 games again, says Undefined. That's a good problem to have. Samuel says, who do you suggest to run this organization and return the Giants to greatness? I would tab Belichick. That's what I would do. D-Pat says, Tiki Barber was right. Tiki said weeks ago DeVito would start over Locke if Jones got benched. Yeah, no, I mean, I think you could see that possibly coming, but the difference between seeing it coming and them actually doing it was so different, right? Because you're inviting so much criticism of your quarterback personnel evaluation of Drew Lock and that investment by doing it. So it was almost like you felt like, especially because I remember I talked to Drew Lock after he played that fourth quarter against the Eagles, and he wasn't making excuses, but he basically said, like, it's really tough to go in when you're not game plan for it. And the defense knows you're throwing because you're down 3 touchdowns. You're not running the ball. Like, it just wasn't a true like chance to give him to play. And so it really is doing wrong by him doing this. So that's why, even though it felt like it was possible, doing it is like another level. But yes, for sure, that was accurate. VF says, was rewatching Daniel Jones' playoff win. He was throwing to no receivers while Cousins had Jefferson and TJ Hawkinson. Yeah, exactly. Had no support. Yep. Authentic says, will you ask him about losing the locker room? Yes. I asked Dable. I've asked Dable several times about the locker room. I asked him today about whether he's worried that the locker room isn't going to understand benching a guy in part because it's financial and not just playing. Parlay says, look at the 2018 draft. We could have had Josh Allen and Nick Chubb. Instead, we took Saquon and Will Hernandez. This is not on Dable. He got the best out of Jones, better than any head coach with Jones. They haven't gotten anything out of Jones the last 2 years. They just got a little bit out of him the first season, but that year they went to the playoffs mostly because of their defense and their good game management across the board, like of their specific opponents. And then obviously Daniel had the 2 games against the Colts and the Vikings. John says Locke has no future here. He was brought in to be a backup if the team was competitive and Daniel Jones got hurt. DeVito has to be the choice here. All right. Any inside intel on how the visit with Colorado and Sanders went? Says K-Mac. Not yet. How do you not fire them and see if Belichick can fix this embarrassment of an organization? Says B Dords. Yeah, I agree. I don't know how you can't go to that. All right, let's see. D-Pat says DeVito won games last year in part due to Wink's defense and Saquon. I do not see him having the same success minus Andrew Thomas and a horrible run defense. Right. Andrew came back for that. That's a good point. Henry says, who do you think is the best fit in this coming draft at quarterback? I think Milroe, Ward, and Shador all have that dual threat ability, that that you like, that Dable likes, that Shane likes. I do not know if they're going to be here to be overseeing this quarterback selection and what their preference is. I think Shador is exciting. I don't know if they're going to invite everything that comes with him, including the Dion factor, as well as, or is Dion going to steer him clear of New York, right? So those are all questions. I'm still, Henry, I still need to do more work on that. I still need to do more work on the quarterbacks, and that's what I'm going to spend the bulk of the rest of this season and into next offseason doing, that and the GM and coach search. That guy says GM needs to go. Chris says, are the Giants best passing on the quarterback draft class this year and best going for a vet? Hard to say that they would be better off doing that, considering that there's no promise in the quarterback room right now for the future. How do you rationalize that? Certainly the one way you could, like I said earlier, trading for an established vet versus signing some stopgap. If this GM and coach are here next year, which I can't see that happening at this rate, but if they are, again, like, you need to win some football games. It can't just be waiting again to the next draft. I mean, this is an organization that says they don't tank. You're just going to keep losing until a better quarterback class comes in. I mean, that's essentially what you've been doing, and you're still screwing it up. All right, let's see. Who are we going to here? All right. Time for our okay. Pete asked a super chat question, and then I'm going to ask our Estate 98 Giants trivia question of the day. So Pete says, personally, I think we are quarterback away because I think Dable needs a certain type of quarterback to run his offense proficiently. Daniel Jones couldn't run his offense. Well, I mean, what is his type of quarterback? Because if your type is Josh Allen, who is a top 2 or 3 quarterback in the entire NFL, I mean, every offensive coach looks better when they have a top 3 quarterback. So, I think getting a better quarterback, yes, that's a goal. But are you guaranteed to have a better offense and unlock things? I mean, Josh Allen, you watched him. He just beat Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs. Like, this is where we're at. All right, let's see. Okay. Time for the Estate 98 trivia question of the day. This is when I ask you a Giants trivia question. And so in the comment section, in the queue, when I ask this question, I need you all to give your answer as quickly as you can in the comment section. When you answer that question, the first person to answer it correctly will receive a free bottle of Estate 98 coffee. That's one of our sponsors. Okay. So I will mail it to you. You will send me your address on Instagram in DMs, and I will get that to you. So we're going to go to our Estate 98 trivia question here. All right. Your question is, in 2019, Daniel Jones' rookie season, he made a start, his first start in Tampa Bay. He had 4 total touchdowns, 2 passing, 2 rushing. He threw for 336 yards and 2 touchdowns. There was a player in the Giants locker room after that game dropping F-bombs and talking about how great Daniel Jones looked and projecting that he was the dude and was going to be a great player for the future of the franchise. But it was out of character for the F-bombs to come out both out of that locker room and out of that player. It's particularly about a guy in Daniel Jones who, seemed like, the white bread quarterback, like a guy that there was not a lot to emotionally, but there was a player in there dropping F-bombs, talking about F-bombs happening in the huddle while Daniel Jones was galvanizing the team to that 32-31 win over the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Who was that player in the locker room talking about the F-bombs after that game? I got to go find this quote as well. Let's see. Let me see if I can find the exact quote. Looks like people are struggling with it right ahead here. All right, let's see. And actually, this player said that Daniel Jones entered the huddle with the Giants trailing 12-3 in the game, and he said, "Let's effing score." And so this veteran player on that Giants offense revealed Daniel Jones dropping an F-bomb in the huddle. Who was it? Looks like no one's got the right answer yet. We will see that continue to roll on. Pete, thank you so much for that super chat there. As you guys are answering and guessing, I want to remind you we are sponsored by MyBookie. MyBookie is rolling out the red carpet for sports bettors this football season. Pat's picks are hitting. My Jameis Winston overs hit this week and doing very well against the spread for the season. Predicted the Giants to be 8-2 at the bye. They were 2-8 at the bye. They were 2-8 at the bye. So, given that, need you to use this promo code Pat's Picks at the link in my social media profiles, and it will give you a 100% match on your first deposit of $50 or more, all the way up to $1,000, plus a $10 casino chip with MyBookie. Also brought to you by Boom Chaga Mushroom Super Drink, a natural extract loaded with anti-inflammatory, immune-boosting antioxidants and heart-healthy compounds. You can easily pour this natural liquid supplement into any of your favorite drinks. I put mine in my coffee every morning and immediately feel the difference. Chaga has the ability to lower cholesterol, reduce inflammation, and improve immune and heart health with its beta-glucans and antioxidants. Go to boomchaga.com today. Use the promo code TalkinBall25 or the QR code here, and you'll get a month's supply for $30. Start feeling the difference today at boomchaga.com. And brought to you by Estate 98 Coffee. Estate 98 Coffee is a specialty coffee concentrate, perfect for when you want to make a quick cup and skip the lines. It takes me less than 10 seconds to make a delicious Estate 98 iced or hot coffee. It's great as a mixer for espresso martinis, and each bottle can make up to 16 cups. Go to estate98.com/talkingball to get an exclusive offer for 80% off your first order. I saw the correct answer come in, and the correct answer, which veteran player revealed that Daniel Jones was dropping F-bombs in the huddle in his first start in a win in Tampa Bay, and which player was continuing to drop F-bombs talking about how Daniel Jones was definitely going to be the guy for their future. J-Rock comes in with the right answer. It is Russell Shepard, the veteran wide receiver Russell Shepard, Old Shep, as we jokingly called him and as they called him in the locker room. J-Rock, here's what you do. Direct message me on Instagram. My handle is PL on NFL there, same as my YouTube channel. And send me your address or P.O. box, wherever you want it sent, and you will have a free bottle of Estate 98 coffee sent to that address. Great job, J-Rock, getting that question correct. All right. We're going to roll down the queue here. Make sure we get to all your questions before we head out, because this is obviously a huge day around the Giants team and around the beat. All right, let's see. We have that guy says the GM said himself he wasn't going to get fired. I hope he's so wrong. Yeah, that was pretty interesting for him to say that definitively. That guy says Tommy's only coming in because he's a hometown favorite. Brett says, Pat, you need a raise for this madness. I appreciate you saying that, Brett. From your lips to God's ears, I hope my editors hear that as well. Parlay says, if Daboll stays, I can see us getting Milroe, a mobile quarterback, and can throw the deep ball, just like Josh Allen type of quarterback. Jake says, Shedeur Sanders wants Vegas. John P. says the best landing spot for him is Kansas City in a Taysom Hill type role. He's talking about Daniel Jones. That guy says you can polish gold, you can polish silver, you can even polish bronze. Yeah, I get you. Parlay says, if we have the top pick in the draft, what quarterback could you see the Giants drafting? Yeah, I don't know the answer to that yet. I would be lying if I told you I knew the answer to that at this moment. Brett says, if Daniel Jones got $10,000 per hit, who made out better, Daniel or the owners? He got wrecked every year, got up every time. The Wolves will enjoy this next piece of meat. Yep, no doubt. Michael says, Eli, Peyton, and Troy Aikman reveled over Drew Lock's performances last season against the Niners and Eagles. Trash he is not. Good candidate to sub for Jalen Hurts next year. Stanley says, how can Brian Daboll have an inept offense when in Buffalo he had a thriving offense with Josh Allen? I think your answer there is that he no longer has Josh Allen. Phil says, do you think Trevor Lawrence would be a better option if available next season? So far, Lawrence has looked like a quarterback with promise but shortcomings similar to Daniel Jones. Even if you think he's a better player than Daniel Jones, has left Jacksonville wanting a lot more. Barb says she doesn't want Justin Fields. Kirk says, John says, I could see Broncos Sean Payton taking Daniel Jones on a cheap contract and turning him into Taysom Hill lookalike. Yeah, I mean, could also just see him getting better football out of Daniel Jones in general, but I see what you mean with Bo Nix there now. We shouldn't pick a quarterback without talking to Todd McShay, says Barb. Go back and look at his analysis of Jones. Spot on. Yep. Have always told you guys, too, the processing of Jones is the thing that is lacking, that gets overlooked. He actually has the physical attributes. It's the processing that's the problem. That guy says that's the only reason he's starting. How a fan base can we be this stupid to be happy to watch a game? That guy says, like Eli says in his commercial, we're not going to win a game all year, but we won't lose a tailgate, especially with Tommy Cutlets. Stanley says, why are people saying Belichick can't relate to young players when he's a year removed from coaching? There's been a huge wave against kind of the older established coach. You know, one guy who's bucking the trend right now is Vic Fangio, sticking around, going to Philadelphia in a defensive coordinator role and coaching his butt off there in Philly. But by and large, this past cycle was reflective of owners across the board trying to go younger and trying to go younger and essentially foregoing experience. And so I think what you're seeing, one reason I believe the NFL is down and there's so much bad football and so many bad teams is that a lot of the best coaches have not gotten jobs. You know, Vrabel, Belichick, even Martindale as a defensive coordinator having to go to college, and then, he's going to take that. And you would imagine next year, some NFL team is going to be very fortunate, or the year after, or whenever that Michigan contract is up, if he ever comes back into the league, guys like Martindale, guys like Jim Schwartz, who was a guy who was a retread in as a head coach who wasn't working out in the NFL, bounced around, ends up in Cleveland. He's an excellent defensive coordinator there. Let's see, who else? Definitely like a lot of established coaches who, like Belichick, if he's in Dallas, Philadelphia eventually, New York, wherever, he's going to make that operation better just from a standpoint of being able to run it as a head coach. So there's a lot of things missing. Unknown says Belichick is not fixing this. Brett says, I can't wait until we walk by our old slot machine again. Stanley says, why people think Wink Martindale is a better coach? Because he is. One thing Martindale did really well and does really well, Belichick does this. They're very different coaches there. And like I said, Dable and Martindale together did a really good job in 2022. One thing they did a great job of is in 2022, it was like every week, who are we playing? What weaknesses do we have to highlight and accentuate? What strengths do we have to take away from this team? How do we attack the protections of this team's offensive line? What offensive matchup do we attack offensively? Sticking to that, not playing outside of your quarterback or your team's comfort zones, concealing personnel weaknesses on your side. Like those are things that Martindale does very well that Dable has not been able to do as well since Martindale left. Michael says, what role do you see for Mike Kafka next season? Could he replace Joe Schoen as GM or Dable as head coach? He seems very level-headed. No, I think more likely you see Mike Kafka somewhere else, place like Carolina, whether it's offensive coordinator or otherwise. I think you see him definitely somewhere else. I think he tried to get out of here this year, wasn't successful, but I think he will eventually. Steven says, any thought that the GM and coach are okay jumping quarterback to 3, knowing they are okay regardless what happens the rest of the way? I so hope that's not the case, Pat. I think they need a quarterback desperately. I think their only sell right now is, hey, we're going to get this quarterback right. Giants fans like myself, says Astro Doc, and I have been one since 1970. We just want the truth, and that is what's provided here. Thank you for what you do. You got it, Astro. Appreciate you. Pete says, gunslinger, talking about one of those QBs, okay. Aziki says, how are we supposed to feel good about the GM and coach when they are benching the $40 million quarterback and bypassing the $5 million backup to go to the third stringer? So the depth chart was a lie this whole time. More like they misjudged what their depth chart should be in the first place, right? Was John Mara really hands-off with re-signing DJ? Turning to Tommy to sell tickets seems like ownership decision. That's why Shane isn't holding himself accountable, says John. No, Mara was on the phone with Daniel in the final hour that they were negotiating the contract with him. So John wasn't hands off, but I'm just saying disingenuous to say they only re-signed him because ownership wanted it. Joe Schoen was involved in that and is acknowledged as such, essentially implicitly, that was a mistake and that he made huge mistakes with his roster composition, and that being one of them. So yes, ownership was certainly involved in that, and they bear accountability as well. A2 says, so Daniel Jones just disappears now, not on the sidelines, never to be seen again. I don't mind. Bye-bye, Daniel. Be interesting to see if he practices. I doubt that he will, but we'll see. Stanley says, hey, Pat, I think Drew Allar is the perfect quarterback that can run Brian Dable offense because his skill set is similar to Josh Allen. Interesting name brought up there. Definitely going to be, it seems like an annual exercise at this point, but it's going to be worthwhile talking about all these QBs and where they fit. Brett says ESPN and NFL Network's headline is Ding Dong, the witch is dead. My boy Daniel Jones, cards were stacked against him the moment he was picked. Let's not do it again. And the Giants enable that type of coverage and those types of headlines and that type of tone. That's what I'm saying. Stanley says, I'm telling you this now. The Giants will not draft Shedeur Sanders or Cam Ward. They will draft Penn State quarterback Drew Allar. You heard it here from Stanley. K-Max says, thanks for today, Pat. Good luck out there. I hope you cover a Super Bowl Giants team someday. That'll be nice. I already have too much white hair on the side, so good chance I'll be a silver fox by the time that happens. Parlay says, I hear everyone saying waiting until Arch. We got to let that go. I understand what Eli Manning did, but we have to let that narrative go. Yeah, and, he's got an uncle who's, who's part owner of the Denver Broncos, or, who's royalty and connected strongly to the Denver Broncos and Peyton Manning, right? So who's to say that the Manning family is going to try to steer Arch here? What if Bo Nix doesn't become the 10-year plan there? What was the basis for the feud between Dable and Wink last season? Michael says it was the finger pointing and blame coming from the head coach and the constant kind of trying to take credit for the offense and put down the defense, and also game management problems from the head coach that then in public were being cast as, execution problems, and including like the defense not getting stops. Like it kept kind of wearing on Martindale and on the relationship there. But it wasn't just Martindale and Daboll, obviously. It was Kafka and Daboll. It was Martindale and Daboll. It was a lot of guys in Daboll. There were plenty of coaches, not just Martindale, who left on their own accord without getting fired. That guy says if Joe and Brian are still around next year, they'll definitely go after a quarterback to save their jobs. But in the long run, they'll be fired and will be stuck with another few years of sucking. 1,000,000%, they're doing it to save face. Iconic says, do you think with Daboll's success in the first year, that gave him a bigger ego that made him feel like he was better than before? I think Joe Schoen spoke on the answer to this. Joe Schoen said that we were blinded by the success of the first year, and it colored some mistakes we made in building the team and how we proceeded. I think you could say that for the coach and the general manager, is they did not proceed the correct way. They did not evaluate themselves properly. Yes, ego and a belief that they were a team that they weren't got in the way. I think Belichick would be a head coach, not a general manager, but would have alignment with his GM if you brought him in. That guy says, is Daboll really as big? All right, let's be nice. Let's not name call. Does he have a little man complex? I think there's insecurity from this regime in general. Yes, I would say insecurity and ego. Yes. And also the Giants in general have an arrogance and ego to them in these situations. Here's the thing, though. What I don't like about how the Giants operate in these situations is, it's unprofessional and unfair to criticize the head coach and the GM and the quarterback. But when we tell you it's okay to throw them under the bus, go right ahead, right? No, that's not how I work. I just tell you what I see. Parlay says Deonte Banks was solid, not great, but solid his first year. What happened? I think it's the pressure of the offense not producing, the defense slumping their shoulders, feeling like, here we go again. And then also it's maturity and just how to handle things when they go poorly. I can't see, I saw it coming, him quitting on the field. I didn't see that coming. A-Tone says, if we lose out and the losses are not close to John Mara, clean house. Yes, in my opinion. Iconic says, Mara told him you can go from Bono to Bozo real quick in New York. Yes, he did. What a prescient comment from the owner. You wish he had a crystal ball for his own team as well. He was also brought to be a man cornerback like Deonte Banks, is what Iconic's saying. And yes, they play more zone, which he's not as good at. Also, though, I do think it's always important to remember, yes, Deonte Banks has deserved the criticism he's received and it hasn't been good enough. But don't forget, it's ridiculous to criticize the secondary for bad tackling when the running backs are coming downhill, blasting through the hole with no resistance because the defensive line's not doing the work either. It's on everybody, and it starts up front, either lack of investment or poor play or both. The Giants aren't getting enough out of their defensive line, and that's why they are the worst run defense in the league. We're sponsored here by MyBookie, Boom Chaga, and Estate 98 Coffee. MyBookie, use the promo code PATSPICKS, get a 100% match on your first deposit of $50 or more, all the way up to $1,000, plus a $10 casino chip. I do have the Cowboys covering tonight. Could be a mistake, but by my numbers, based on the way the spreads that I've been doing every Wednesday, picking every Wednesday against the spread every week, the Texans are 3-7 against the spread this season. Cowboys only 3-6, but the Texans have just found ways not to cover even when they've won these games. And so I do not trust them. And that's a pretty big line. I think it was 7 when I picked it. Let's see. Yeah, it was 7.5 Texans. So I picked the Cowboys, even though obviously could be really tough to do that. But yes, Pat's picks at the link in my social media profiles. Estate 98 coffee. It takes you 10 seconds to make an iced or hot Estate 98 coffee. Go to estate98coffee.com/talkinball to get an exclusive offer for 80% off your first order. It's perfect for when you want to make a quick cup. It's a specialty coffee concentrate. It's also great as a mixer for espresso martini. And Boom Chaga Mushroom Super Drink, a natural extract with anti-inflammatories, immune-boosting antioxidants, heart-healthy compounds, beta-glucans, and antioxidants that can help you lower cholesterol, reduce inflammation, and improve immune and heart health. Go to boomchaga.com, use the Talking Ball 25 code or the QR code here on your screen to get that deal. Like I said, please support our sponsors. That's the best way to support the podcast. Also, thank you to the Super Chats, and please hit the like button on your way out. Let's see. Iconic says, Pat, you're the greatest. You missed out in Munich. I know, Iconic. I was really upset not to be there. Very disappointed that I wasn't in Germany in Munich, but got some good family time in. And obviously that was an epic disaster of a loss by the organization. But never want to miss games. Don't usually miss them, and not expecting to miss any. Maybe one the rest of the way, but going to be staying on top of this team and this situation because, especially after the games, no more important time to be in there than now. Last comment I'm going to hit is from Devin. Coughlin had the guts to find a Hall of Fame decade-plus fan favorite in Strahan and kept the locker room accountable. Lack of accountability here from coaching is frustrating. McKinney, now Banks. Agree, leadership isn't good enough. I think they clean house at the end of the season. We will see where it goes. But, of course, the news of the day, Daniel Jones benched and likely shut down for the season. Tommy Cutlets named the starter against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and then likely, of course, in Thanksgiving against the Dallas Cowboys in Arlington, Texas. Thank you so much for being here on Talking Ball Live with Pat Leonard. This was an emergency lunchtime episode here on Monday, November 18th. If you missed us on the live chat on our YouTube channel, PL on NFL, please listen to our audio version of the podcast on the Believe Network, on Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. I'll be posting that forthwith. And we will continue to go live throughout the week and after every Giants game here on the YouTube channel, PL on NFL. J-Rock, I believe it was, please direct message me on PL on NFL on Instagram. You won the Estate 98 Giants trivia giveaway today with that answer of Russell Shepard. Nice work. And look forward to seeing you guys here later. Next thing you can do is go over to nydailynews.com because I am the New York Daily News NFL columnist and Giants beat writer. Go to newyorkdailynews.com/sports. Click on my column that is up now about what this decision says about Joe Schoen and the Giant. That is up on our website now. Thanks for being here. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Talk to you guys later here on the Talking Ball with Pat Leonard YouTube channel. And again, on my way out, thanks to especially Elias, Jim, Daniel, Danny. Let's see who else. Chris. Let's see. And Pete and John for all those super chats. Really appreciate that. Take care. See you next time on Talking Ball Live with Pat Leonard.